So now you are an owner of the business. How long has it been?
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
What are the most common errors small business owners make with their bookkeeping? Because small business owners is kind of your bread and butter.
Right. Yeah.
For your clients.
We're small to mid-sized businesses and the related, owners and individuals working on accounting, bookkeeping, taxes, the whole shoot and match. Most common errors, I would say first are not hiring good help, not hiring, when I say that, external help, not hiring a good CPA or a good bookkeeper, not spending the time to really find out who's good in the marketplace, who's not good, getting referrals from multiple people. Don't go with one person. Many times when people come and talk to me, I'll ask them, are you talking to some other folks? Because you really need to.
Yeah.
We may have gotten along well here, but we might not be the right fit. You just need to continue. So not hiring a good CPA, or even worse, not hiring a CPA at all. But then just overall, thinking that QuickBooks is going to make you an accountant. QuickBooks really keeps us in business. There are owners that will buy it and think, oh, I've got it taken care of. It's so much easier for us to do the bookkeeping right from the beginning, or for us to even teach the client how to do the books right and let them do it during the year where we're just overseeing throughout the year. Much cheaper than to leave it to us at the end of the year when we're doing the tax return and have it done then. Probably another big one is distributions and contributions. So you know this. You're a small to mid-sized business owner, and when you're in that, you're the owner of a small business. You're that business is kind of your alter ego, right?
Yeah.
Not only from a personality standpoint and everything else, and you're living it every day, and you're selling yourself everywhere you go, but at the same time, financially. You're going out, you're at Best Buy and you need to buy a new computer, and doggone it, I forgot to pick up the business credit card, so I'm going to pay for it with my personal credit card. But you don't go back and submit an expense report and get reimbursed for that. You're just saying, oh, I don't have time for that. But you just bought a $1,500 computer, and that's a business expense, but it never gets deducted. We see this all the time. And then the flip side is people that don't have the discipline to carry a business and personal credit card in their wallet, and then they go out to lunch with a friend, not a business expense, but they put it on the business credit card. And they're not intending to take that as a business deduction. They intend for it to be a personal expense, but they use the wrong credit card, but they're not tracking it. And then we give it to them at the end of the year, and they've forgotten the purpose and all of those things. So not being diligent with paying attention to what seems like the small stuff that all of a sudden becomes a big deal at the end of the year if you want to get your tax return done right. And that's a key thing, is getting the tax return done right. It sounds good to, I don't have time for that, or, that's no big deal. It all sounds good, right? Until the IRS comes a calling. It's like a life insurance policy. I don't need it until you need it. Doing things right, tightening up your year, filing a tax return to kind of close out the year and be done with it is the best thing you can do. And then you can put it behind you mentally, physically, everything else, and move on. But people that leave that stuff open and they're not doing things correctly and always wondering if, did I get myself reimbursed for that? I didn't deal with it back then. No, you just want to get those things taken care of.
I've been there. So 17 years later of owning a business, the first couple of years are rough. Learning, you just don't really have that initial mindset to spend the money on a CPA.
Yeah.
It's just not there. And especially with bookkeeping, I think that is often overlooked. Just either getting trained on how to do it correctly. Even if you have a business degree, by the way.
Right.
I have a business degree and I did pretty good in accounting. It took me at least 10, if not 15 years to really understand how bookkeeping works. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times people just overlook it. But I also think that, like you said, when you set up the business, you have to get in this basic habit, like create these basic, powerful habits of doing the books on a consistent basis. And I had to really discipline myself because I naturally don't like doing it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's common as we're like, as business owners, we're, out there trailblazing. And the last thing we want to do is sit down and have to look at all the little cents and dollars that we spend and figuring out where it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if it's any consolation, I don't enjoy doing it either. But I too have learned. I mean, my favorite part of my job is being with people.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, I'm naturally introverted, but I enjoy being with people because I get to know people. I get to see what God is doing in them and how I might be able to help them in that way. So when I'm doing accounting work, it keeps me from spending time with people, but I see the value in it, and it makes, my tax return really easy at the end of the year because it's all done.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what I'm hearing here is make sure you find a good CPA you can trust, vet them out.
Right.
I've been through that process of not vetting them out and just trusting the first one that you meet, and you realize that they don't know what they're doing. Just because they have a certification doesn't necessarily mean they really know what they're doing.
That's right.
Especially for maybe your type of business. And then second, maybe make sure you have clean bookkeeping. And it kind of ties back to what you said earlier with mergers and acquisitions. You want that business has clean books.
That's right.
And it's easy to see what the financials look like.
That's right. And that 40% number that I mentioned, you have 40% more in value. Everybody that's got a business someday is going to want to sell that business. And that it may not be 40% in value. Maybe it's no percent additional value. Maybe, though, it's the difference between selling your business and not, because so many businesses at the end of the owner's career don't sell. And then you just end up closing the door, locking it, and going home.
Yes.
So
I've seen that many times. That's very common.
Yeah. And so what a blessing to be able to sell that business at the end and be able to see everything that you've poured your heart and soul into continue on, and then give you an opportunity to do some consulting after the fact and that kind of thing.
So clean bookkeeping is actually an investment in your business.
Absolutely it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are some ways small business owners could save on taxes? Probably the most common question you hear.
So we just talked about the first one, good bookkeeping. Yeah. When you go out and you buy a new computer and you put it on your personal credit card and you don't get an expense report, I mean, that's a $1,500 deduction loss. Yes. And you'll never get that back again. So having that bookkeeping done correctly, having it done right. Other things are, I'm a big fan of investing. If you're a business owner, investing in your business first. I'm not a big fan of, hey, let's leave a whole bunch of cash in the business. Excess cash probably should be taken out. Attorneys and financial advisors, I think, would agree, taken out, beyond your cash flow needs and invested elsewhere, kept liquid, whatever you need. But look for opportunities with your employees. I mean, I don't have to say this more than once, we're in a competitive environment now for employees. To hire and retain good quality employees means many times paying them the right salary, right? But salaries, I think it's called a demotivator in the HR world. Somebody's going to be frustrated if they're not paid at their market value, but if you pay them well beyond their market value, they really don't care. That doesn't give them a whole lot of additional motivation. So paying them at their market value, making sure you understand what the market value of a person is, paying at that level, and then being willing to invest in retirement plan and health insurance and all of the other benefits that are out there. And even surveying your employees and saying, hey, I've got this extra money and I see it with the growth of our business that this is an ongoing thing. It's not a one-hit wonder. What are some things that I can do? I've allocated $20,000 a year. And I'd like to provide benefits to you. What is it that you don't have? Boy, asking employees that kind of thing is huge. So there you get additional deductions through that kind of thing. Another is the hiring of your children. Yeah. Small business owners, and I get this question a lot. There are right ways to do it and wrong ways to do it. Many want to, hey, I'm going to have my 3-year-old. Come to work with, I don't know what, the stories are, but, and I'm going to pay him $10,000 a year. No, that's not good. It needs to be defendable. It needs to be something. Sure. It needs to be valid work. And as a father, and you can relate to this, you want to provide your children valid, valuable work. You don't want them to think that the world is an easy ride. And if you pay your kid $10,000 a year for doing nothing, that's an easy ride. That's a lesson that I don't want my kids to learn.
No.
So hiring your kids, and there are good articles, and the IRS has a good circular on how to do that the right way.
Any others? Because I know taxes is definitely a big one. So you can, what about like profit sharing is probably a good one.
Yeah, it would be another.
Because I found out from my employees that if I surveyed them, I don't know if they'd want the retirement matching benefit.
Okay.
I don't know how popular that is depending on the industry or the business, but sometimes I think a lot of employees don't really see a lot of value in it. So what you're saying is maybe ask them.
Yeah.
What's of value to you?
Absolutely, ask them, because there are, I've got a client that's a small chain of restaurants and pizza restaurants, and their employees are looking for something totally different. They're in a different socioeconomic group. They're younger. Probably most aren't married. And so they're just looking for different things out of life than folks like I am, you and I are.
Yeah.
And so, I think talking to them around those things, there's always the looking ahead. A popular thing is at the end of the year, I've got extra money. I see where my tax burden is. I've talked to my CPA, and I'm going to owe really more than I want to this year. And maybe next year is going to be it's a dip this year and an increase next year or something like that. Whatever you're wanting to do maybe to level things out would be, I've got some extra cash at the end of the year. Is there some piece of equipment or a new vehicle or something that I want for next year that I can go ahead and purchase before the end of the year and get the deduction for this year? I'm a huge fan too, and this is just the corporate finance thing. Level things out as much as you can. It's really hard to see how your business is doing when monthly, quarterly, annually, you're experiencing these wild swings. IRS doesn't care if you buy something this year versus next year. And if the reality is that you need it in January or February, and you know that you're going to buy it anyway, go ahead and buy it this year. And if that helps level out your net income and your tax bill, amen. No reason not to do that.
Other side of this, though, is not just to spend money just to save on taxes. It's better to keep, 70% of your profits than to just go ahead and spend on something you don't really need.
That's a great point, and that's kind of why I threw in the catch-all there of, and you're going to need within the next 3 months. You never want to make never want to make a purchasing decision based on the taxes. I'd go even further to say you never want to make a business decision based on taxes. Taxes are one component of many that you need to factor in, and I think business owners get that. But it's easy to fall into the trap of, especially if you've got a high tax bracket, if you're paying effectively federal and state, and maybe even you're paying your own Social Security because you're a pass-through entity or a single member LLC or something like that. You could be 38, 40%. Hey, I can save that money. But if you didn't need it, that's a 30, 40%.
In reality, if you're having to pay taxes, that's a good thing because that means you made a profit in your business.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Quick question here is, any recommendation on how much or maybe how many months of cash reserves a business should hold on to?
Yeah.
Minimum?
I think, minimum, I'd say one. I mean, that would
1
just
month.
be the Doug Freeman rule but I think to be able to sleep at night, any business owner would say 1 month. I know, and this is in business books, of which I've read a lot, both Christian and non-Christian, anywhere between, some will go as high as 6 months, but I think most center around 2 to 3 months. If you've got 2 to 3 months worth of operating cash, including payroll and all of your expenses in the bank account at any given time, you're good. But you can also do a cash flow analysis, see where your low point is, and if your low point is still higher than in any place you'd be, even if you're at the 3 month point, go ahead and skim some of that off. And maybe it ends up being 2.5 months when you're done, but you still know that you're never going to be zero because of the analysis that you've done.
As we record this episode, the yield is just for savings is crazy high.
Yeah.
I mean, your cash reserves should not be just sitting in your checking account doing nothing for you.
No.
Put it in a high yield savings account or even a money market and you can have that cash back in a day if you need it, right?
Absolutely.
So it's not just sitting there, lazy money, right? Not doing anything for you.
Yeah, and we've even got clients that have, north of $1 million in cash sitting around, and I've even heard banks talk about this aggregation that they have now. They serve as kind of the quarterback of a number of banks where you can take $1 million to one bank, they farm 750 of it out to 3 other banks, then it will be under the FDIC limit, so that your money is still protected in that world. Yeah, and this is all exciting and new to me anyway, because we've gone through this prolonged period of ridiculously low interest rates and nobody was interested, and your 0.2% interest was just
pointless.
Yeah. But we're in a very different environment right now, for sure.
On the flip side, getting a loan is almost like, I wouldn't even want to look at that.
Right.
It's just ridiculous at this point.
Yeah, and
money's expensive.
Yeah, economy's tight and interest rates are high. So yeah, it is.
Yeah, goes both ways. So let's talk about tithing.
Yeah.
How should Christian small business owners handle tithing?
Boy, that is a really good question. And I've actually wrestled with that a lot, even before I was a business owner, just trying to really understand what God would have us do there. And here's what I've come up with. And there are different people out there that would say different things. I know if you've not read this, a great book, it's called Business by the Book by Larry Burkett. Larry Burkett went to be with the Lord a number of years ago, but wrote this book. And it was just a good primer, I think, and may have been one of the original ones, at least in our lifetime, of people stepping out and saying this is how to run the business God's way. But I don't remember exactly what he said, but I think it's kind of along this line, right? You've got the revenue of your business and you've got net income. And if you want to tithe from that net income, that would be great. That's awesome if there's enough there. You could take 10% of that. I've heard people talk about, and I'm just kind of giving different scenarios here. I've heard people talk about tithing, and when I say tithing and 10%, they're kind of interchangeable. Just to define, tithing means 10%. That's the definition. So look at revenue, 10%. Well, some businesses don't have 10% that drops to the bottom line. So that's a tough deal. I'll tell you where I land on all of that is if you're running your business responsibly with cash flow and everything else, really looking at it in Scripture, I don't believe God actually says you need to tithe from your business. But what God's looking to is us, is individuals, and it's a matter of the heart, right?
Yes.
And so He is saying, what I have given you, what I have provided to you, I will, Malachi 3, I will protect you and I'll open up the floodgates and all of that, if you'll give back, if you'll tithe. And I think then if you look at that, whether you take a salary or dividends or a distribution or whatever the money that you take from your business is, if you will tithe on that, I feel like that's the way to go. Now, I also qualify that for those who would think, oh, well, Doug, that's not enough because then that's just a small part of the business. Okay, that's fine. Then don't stop at 10%. That's a starting point, right? God is saying tithe. But so many people I know who just are joyful givers and love the Lord and really see giving as an act of worship.
Yeah.
10%'s low.
Right.
We're going to go on from there, 20, 30%. And that's where you can really balance it out. But at the end of the day, and you know this, we all know this, it's what the Lord calls you to do. It's how the Lord brings you. If you've got a business that drops 50% to the bottom line, maybe God is calling you to tithe on that, on the revenue. If you don't, maybe God's calling you to tithe on the net, and maybe there's somewhere in between. I don't know the right answer, but I know at a minimum what we take in from a cash perspective in our homes and our families, through whatever means, I believe God's calling us to tithe on that.
Because in reality, it's not ours anyways.
That's right.
And I always see this as really a test of faith. How tightly are you holding on to that money?
Yeah.
And I would, just to be completely honest, I've struggled with this in the past, but the last couple of years, I've really just examined my own heart and loosened up the grip a little. And it really forces you to have a stronger faith that things will be taken care of. And up until now, everything's always been taken care of in an abundance.
Yeah.
I mean, trust me, I'm not preaching the prosperity gospel here. I'm not at all.
Right.
I don't think that's what I'm saying. But it really comes down what you said, it comes down to the individual's heart.
Mm-hmm.
You feel the Holy Spirit will kind of nudge you on, I don't know if that's going to be good enough. You can do better. Come on.
Right.
You can do
exactly.
better.
Well, to your point, let me tell you a quick story. So, when my parents were very intentional when they were raising us. I mean, just very intentional about the lessons we were to learn and so on and so forth. So when I graduated from college, there was a month between my graduation and starting my first job. And I had to drive from Oklahoma City to Houston for my first job. And before I left, on the day I was leaving, Mom and Dad sat me down on the couch, and I just knew that there was some amazing gush of wisdom that was going to come from this, this final meeting before he takes off for his first day on the job. And of all the things they could have said to me, what they said was, "Don't forget to tithe." And I to this day, I'm still like, why in the world did they say that? And I know the answer, and they've said this to me. It's because they had always tithed, and what it says in Malachi 3 was exactly their experience. I will protect you. It doesn't mean that I'm going to prosper you, prosperity gospel. It doesn't mean that I'm going to make you wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. Yeah. It doesn't mean that everything is always going to be go your way. It doesn't mean a lot of things, but what it does mean is I will always be there for you. And that's what they experienced. And they could have told me a lot of things on that day, but it was so important to them. And you know what? I've lived that now for 35 years or whatever since I've graduated from college. And when my kids start their first day, because I've got two that are out of college now working, when they start their first day, guess what I tell them?
Yes.
The same
good
thing.
Advice.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the things that I think a lot of small business owners, especially small business owners, will struggle with, because we are in control of that cash, full control, and I think get tempted on, we need to get this and that. I think a really admirable goal is to take 10%. I think the 10% was more for like the temple. Like when they were writing about it, and I think churches nowadays kind of use that as just like a number, but whatever number it is, it should be off the top.
Yeah.
Because if your business is not operating with God as the first person getting paid person, or the first to get paid, you might need to examine what's going on in the business, that you're not having enough for God first.
Yeah.
Because he's the one who's really operating the business.
Yeah.
He's the CEO. We're the COO.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and I've forgotten the scriptural reference, but we all know the verse. I've learned to be content in whatever circumstances I am.
Paul.
I'm confident that Paul was a tither, because
Yes.
that's what God does with tithing. And that's what I think people miss out on is when you tithe, you realize I'm giving away 10% or more of my money. So how could I be better off? Oh, but trust me, you are. Because God not only works in your finances, but he also works in your heart. And he takes some of those desires away, and he breeds in you that contentment and that trust in him, that you are far better off and far more content and far more able to sleep at night as a tither with only 90% of what God's blessed you with.
Yes.
Than without doing that. And just like you pointed out earlier, it's all God's anyway. He can take what he wants. He's giving us this opportunity to see him in a different way and to see his blessing that comes through this joy that he's given us.
I have to add, it also applies to taxes. I mean, Jesus said, hey, you got to give to Caesar what's Caesar's. And I think sometimes there's a reluctance there, but I think it's a good reminder that the government is ordained by God.
Absolutely.
So when we're not paying our taxes in full and we're trying to skim there, it's almost, it's kind of similar, because we're not obeying to Christ's orders.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So how is God using your business?
Boy, in a lot of ways, I'd say probably the biggest way, and I'll give some perspective on this, but the biggest way is through prayer. Internally, when I bought the business, I said it was a faith-based business. The owner wasn't
You could just tell he ran things with a biblical heart. I don't know that they were necessarily, praying all the time or whatever. I don't know what their culture was like at that, but I implemented that. So when we have meetings, they're usually around food and they always involve prayer. We have employees who are not believers, and I ask them when they come on board, is it okay if are you going to be uncomfortable if I do this? And never has one said, no, I wouldn't be comfortable. They're more than happy to participate in that as part of our custom. So that's been a wonderful thing. And what's even more of a blessing is that those same employees who are not believers, I've had one of them in recent memory come to me and ask me for prayer for a particular thing, and to be able to put my hand on her shoulder and pray for this situation. God, that would not have come around had I not been praying before meetings for lunch and that kind of thing. So God has used that to really touch the hearts of employees, at least for who we are. It's given me the opportunity to share in those times. This is what I believe, and just kind of put it out there for them to, consider. And my biggest hope is that God is, and I think He is, God is working through me in our business so that people see that we run a business in an ethical manner. We treat our clients properly. I treat my employees properly. We put God first in what we do, and that the employees are seeing that. So externally, not a whole lot different. It's very much almost a witness kind of a thing. I've had clients come in, and a great example a few years ago, a client who hadn't called a CPA or any advisor first, bought a business, realized he had paid too much. He had hired us, was with us about 6 months, literally, Bronson, came in, crumbled at my desk and started crying. And this big guy too. I'm like, wow, okay, we need to talk more about this. And said, Doug, I paid too much for this business. I don't know what to do. I'm at a loss. And so we were able to work with him just from an accounting and business perspective to help him get perspective on where he is exactly and what it's going to take over the course of months and years to get out of that. But at the same time, he gave me the opportunity, allowed me to pray with him about that God would do, a work in his business and help him to come to that. And I'm thankful, glad to say that things are better for him now. And so I get those kind of opportunities, which is really neat. I get opportunities to, I'm a big fan of when my wife and I give. There are a lot of great organizations out there, American Heart Association, and some things that are from a worldly perspective are still close to my heart because I've had family members die of cancer and those kind of things. But there's so many people giving to those organizations that we have chosen just to give to Christian organizations.
Sure.
And so we'll do that through the business and through our personal also. But we've been able to sponsor tables at events, at Christian events, or be a sponsor at some organization, in doing that. So been able to do that, a little bit of marketing that comes out of it for the firm, but more than anything, it's trying to bolster these organizations that are doing great work in the marketplace for businesses and making the gospel known among business owners. We all know UBN locally and the work that they do, working with business owners to help them in these same things that we're talking about here. Just a big, big fan of that. We've got churches and places that we go as individuals to learn about that. But there are also opportunities at the business level where you can do this, where maybe you've got a non-Christian owner, but you've got employees who are Christian that are a part of organizations like that. And maybe there's something they can bring back to the organization and get the owner to implement. Whatever that looks like, I don't know, but great opportunities to do those kind of things. So God's used us. He's absolutely blessed us, but that's not, I didn't really take that as part of the question. How's God using us? It would be, I think, through prayer and witness.
Sure.
Yeah.
Are you guys praying before every meeting?
We do, but that's a great question. I will say there are meetings that we do not pray before, and it's not.
But a lot of them you are.
A lot of them we are, and again, a lot of them because there's food involved.
You know what? That's a good reminder when to pray.
Yeah, but if it's just a quick ad hoc meeting or whatever, meeting or whatever, no, we're not slowing it. But if it's a scheduled meeting, I'll say, hey, you know what? This is a big deal. Let's give this up to God in prayer.
That makes sense.
If this is something that's scheduled and we're going to be together for a long time.
Whenever we do it, it always includes, Lord, keep us focused and not distracted.
Yeah,
during the meeting. Would you say what makes you guys unique, potentially to the competition, is your responsiveness?
Yes, I would. I wouldn't necessarily have thought of that. So dial back to my mom and dad and me always performing for them. I'm kind of still that type of person. I don't like to call somebody and wait for 2 weeks to get an answer, if ever an answer. So the prior owner and I both had big firm experience, and big firms are organized where they've got divisions. And so we've divisionalized ourselves. He is a great tax strategist. And from a compliance and a consulting perspective, he just does a great job. We've got good people in that group. So there's a tax group that is busy during busy season.
Sure.
They're not working 8,500 hours a week, but they still are very busy. And I don't like for them necessarily to have to return every phone call they get. So during busy season, I'll be that person. And when people contact me, I get back to them right away. And then when it's not busy season, all of our employees are really good about getting back to, if I don't pick up the phone right away, I'm calling you back, or you get an email back within 2 hours, or if I'm really busy, or sometimes I'll miss something, I'll go through the next day and see that I didn't respond. But I do, and I wouldn't have thought that was a thing, but I would say 75% of the people that walk through my door, one of the reasons they're leaving is because my CPA won't call me back. And I'm assuming that applies to all service providers. So it's just, if all I have to do is pick up the phone to get and keep a client, I'll do it. It's pretty easy.
That's incredible how common it is in the CPA world. Being a business owner for a long time now, it's just almost like standard practice. And I obviously it's not something you want. And if you are a person who's organized and you want things, you want to file your taxes on time. You want that communication there. So then you can do that. So then you don't have unnecessary stress. But for some reason, I don't know why it is. Maybe there's some introvertedness with CPAs.
Absolutely.
And perfectionism where if I can't respond perfectly, I got to wait until I can make the perfect email. And that could be 2 or 3 weeks later. But instead, why not just say, hey, I got your email. I'm working on it. I'll get back to you in a couple of days. Fine. That's awesome. You know, but I mean, good for you guys. I love that. And I think that is a huge competitive advantage because in the CPA world, that is not common. So as we wrap this up, how can people find out more about your business?
Yeah. So thanks for asking. Of course, like any business in today's day and age, technology, go to our website. It's DougFreemanCPA.com or DougFreeman.cpa. And find out more about us. We've got on there, I've got a short little video that talks about our services and what we do. We've got different sections of the website that do that. Even if you're looking for a place to go learn more about different aspects of small businesses, whether it's tax or accounting, bookkeeping, we've got a blog on there where we're not writing our own content. We get this content from our research, our tax and accounting research providers. So it's excellent content. And we post it out there a couple times a week. It's on LinkedIn and Facebook too. But go out there. If you've got questions, it's a great resource to get an answer to those questions. And then if you've got deeper questions or want to talk more about it, feel free to call us. I mean, I love sitting down and having a cup of coffee and sharing with people just how things can be done. Whether or not you become a client is totally tangential to the conversation. It's just, I know what it's like when I need a plumber and I don't have a friend that's a plumber, and I'm trying to find somebody who's going to do a good job and not, cause my pipes to burst tomorrow or whatever the case is. So I want to make sure that even if we're not the right fit, I had a guy tell me one time that 25% of the people in the world, even though they don't know you, they already don't like you. And I think about that, and I think that's true, right? There is a chemistry between a service provider and a person in a business. And so I want to make sure that if I'm not the right person, I want to get you to the right person. I know enough CPAs, and I'm sure I can introduce you to who you need to go to find that right person. But as far as we're concerned, yeah, do that. Give us a shout. Shoot me an email. Love to visit with anybody.
So you are taking on new clients.
Absolutely, always are.
What's your kind of range in revenue for a small business?
Yeah, we like to for our
or mid-size too.
Yeah, CPA accounting practice business. We're really looking for north of $1 million in revenue. Up to I'd say we'd probably say 35 million would be top end of where we'd be. We've both the two heavies in the business have operated and been CFOs of much larger businesses. But as far as what we've got the bandwidth to in our firm, I'd say 35 million is top. We do bookkeeping services, really just bookkeeping for businesses even down to, 250,000 up to $1 million. But once you get to that point, we kind of move you up to the firm level work. But yeah, that's where we are.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for coming on the show. It's been very insightful, and I definitely learned a lot. And thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Bronson.